So we've heard quite some pretty mind-blowing, some pretty out-there stuff over the last 45 minutes or something. So I just want to wrap things up by thinking a little bit about how you can make some of your own collisions. And I don't want you to think that all of this is kind of out of reach of your organization. So just have a little bit of a rest, look at this beautiful cinema graph, just let the mind chill out. I think one of the things to keep in mind is that the future is nearer than you think. In many ways, it's already here. It just doesn't have a lot of traction. All the things that we've spoken about, they sound like science fiction ideas, but they're all happening. Every story, everything that was said, every person, every talk that we went to, it was about people's experience. They're just telling stories about the work that they're doing, the prototypes they're creating, the research that they're doing. And they're just people. They're just people like you, like I, someone with a vision, someone with a will, a spirit, and a bit of a method to get there. So these are a couple of tips that we picked up over there where people talked about the sort of how rather than the what. And one of them is, constraints really fuel innovation. So don't think because, I'm sitting here, I don't have $1 million or £100,000 or even £10,000 sitting in an R&D budget. What you need is just to get together with a small team, a tight brief, a clear goal, and then a little bit of budget to get you moving. Make that first step, make that first proof of something, a bit of the journey on the way. That first step's the most important step. One example of working within constraints was told by a chap called Dan Ward from the US Air Force. He's a writer on innovation as well. But he told a story about how when the Air Force needed a supercomputer and they didn't have $60 million to spend on a Cray XE6, they had to think about some pretty smart, savvy ways of how to get around that. And one of the people in his team had read some stories about people making parallel processing supercomputers out of old PlayStation 3 consoles. So they found a way to get 1,760 PlayStation 3s, stick them all together, and ended up making the 33rd most powerful supercomputer in the world. Called it the Condor Cluster, because they're in the Air Force. But because it was so powerful and because it cost so little, it actually ended up becoming one of the most useful computers that the Air Force have, because they can now, people have got a piece of code that doesn't quite work, but they want to test it, they can run it on that. It doesn't matter if it crashes it, because it only costs $2 million. They just reboot it and off it goes again. So some of those things, constraints can fuel innovation. The next was a talk that I went to from Astro Teller, real name, Captain of Moonshots, real job title, from Google X. That's the research lab at Google. They're the guys behind driverless cars, smart contact lenses, Project Loon, the balloons in the air, all those things. So they talked a little bit about how they choose what to tackle that I found most interesting. So they've got this lovely Venn diagram that says, well, actually, we need to think of a huge problem, a problem that's going to result in a 10 times improvement of what we see. Not an incremental, a big improvement, a step change. And that has to be coupled with a radical solution. Can we think of something really different that might solve that problem? And then, is there a breakthrough technology that we think potentially could solve it? When those three things come together, they've got what they would call a Project X project, a Google X project. Now, what I think is important is that you think of what your own criteria is. What's your own Venn diagram? What's the things that you want to align that allow you to say, well, okay, I'm going to get some of that and I'm going to try and solve some of those problems. Because if you start to have that and you've got a framework to do your innovation. And then the last part is about knowing how to fail, also from Astro. And it's kind of interesting that history is littered with examples of companies who sort of thought they knew they had the perfect product. They refined it and created it and eventually launched it, and then no one needed it. And it's kind of one of those things. And Astro Teller talked about this idea of the longer you work on something, the less you want to hear about what people think about it. So you want to keep it just, you want to protect it, you want to craft it, you want to make it a bit better, you want to perfect it, and then eventually the big reveal, and then, why don't you want that? The thing is, doing that, it increases your risk of failure, and it increases the cost of that failure. So when we talk about fail fast, fail early, what does it really mean? It means, get out quickly. Find a group of people who you can test it with. Is it a beta group? Is it a small audience? Is it an A/B test? It doesn't really matter. Just find a way to try something quickly and validate the direction and the progress that you're going in. And this is not just product development. This could be a piece of content. Maybe there's, you've got a content strategy, you're not sure if it's going to work. Make a tiny bit of it. Put it out on social. See if it sticks, If you've got a new kind of feature, try a little version of it for a few people. It's just about doing that. It's just about starting to optimize it. I think finally, The last thing I want to say is on a personal level, going back to Dr. Martine Rothblatt, something that she said really resonated with me. It's around her personal philosophy in life. And bear in mind, she's not only the highest paid CEO in London and amazing at AI, she also started a drug company to save her daughter's life, and now developing a way to clone human organs. But I just want to share the last bits about her philosophy.
And my personal philosophy is sort of summed up by a little mnemonic I make for myself, which I call CQ Love Do. And the C stands for curiosity. I'm just insatiably curious. The Q stands for question authority. When people say you can't do something, I just want to know why. I just want to know what the reason is. Love, I believe you have to love transcendentally, which means that loving yourself is not really enough. Love has to start with loving yourself, and if you don't love yourself, it's almost impossible to love anybody else, but you've got to go beyond that. You've got to transcend yourself and love somebody or something else. And then finally, do. If you just sit there and you're up in your own head all the time, you're curious, you're questioning, you're loving somebody, but you're not doing anything, I think you're going to be frustrated. And the only way things happen in the world is by making things.
So that's it from the three of us. Just want to invite Nigel back up to say a few words and to close things. But thanks very much.
Wow, so that was an hour. What an incredible hour. So that was 5 days, 2,300 talks, condensed down into an hour by 3 people. And now I've got about 2 minutes to condense that down again before we all go for the Tex-Mex and the Game of Thrones and Interstellar. So I'm going to very quickly just start with a little postscript to the story of Martine Rothblatt, because I attended that talk as well, and it spooned me out completely. So Bina, her wife of 30 years, doesn't like Bina 48, and Bina 48 feels inadequate in respect of Bina. Okay, so basically Martine Rothblatt, the CEO, highest paid female CEO, has created a Frankenstein monster of her girlfriend that her girlfriend doesn't like. Right, something to think about, right? There are some very powerful people who have some very strange ideas about life, and they are going to inform the world. But aside from that slightly dystopian, spooky side of things, I so thoroughly enjoyed today, and I was actually there, and it's so true that there is so much to see, so much to take on board. You learn something every time other people have been there talk about it, and that was one of the best collections and distillations that I could have hoped to have seen. So I think you've all been incredibly fortunate to have experienced that. The big thing, I think, for me that I took away from that in terms of like a bit broad brushstroke theme is this idea of the blending of the real and the digital or the technology-based. There is no longer separate worlds. There is no longer meat space versus cyberspace. It's all just together. And within that world, within this world where technology is just blanketing out over the world, so Astro Teller and his moonshot, something that they're doing is Project Loon. It's going to bring universal internet access. We already expect ubiquitous connectivity here. We noticed it by its absence. And that fact that it's present everywhere is creating a bit of a kind of a focus back on what all of this technology is really about. And at the end of the day, until our robot overlords and mind clones take over, it's actually all about us. Okay, it's all about humanity. And really, it's about, I think, to coin the phrase that the guys have used, it's about the collision of technology and humanity. And not the collision in an awful way, but frankly, those two things coming together, winding together, and living together. So let's think about some of the terms that we heard from the talk today, which are very, very human terms in many respects. Emotion, serendipity, entertainment, and authenticity. Those aren't the kinds of things you'd normally expect to hear about a technology, an emerging technology festival. And that's really the point. I think David talks about last year the preoccupation with makers and the creation of products. And this year it was kind of slightly transcendental. I think that's how you say it. And we, as human beings, are at the center of these things. Technology is not going away. Technology is not slowing down. It's getting more intimate, more closely aligned with us. We've got the iWatch coming out next week, the beginning of the wearable kind of technology revolution. Will you be getting one? I won't be getting one straight away. But it's whether I do or not, it doesn't matter. Technology is getting nearer to us, and after it gets closer, it will start going slightly into us, I'm afraid to say. And we might be scared of that, but our children won't. So let's think of some of the other terms that we heard. Technosphere, I thought that was absolutely fascinating, this idea of pyramid of technology. So the byproduct of technology is food, something that we'd never even think about. Think about that when you're eating your Tex-Mex tonight. What did we start with? Robots, a robot petting zoo, a friendly robot spider, virtual reality, flying cars. Nobody noticed the absence of Russell Brand, which has certainly got to be one of the highlights of an absence, isn't it? And really the fact that brands are an intrinsic part of humanity and therefore an intrinsic part of technology and an intrinsic part of South by Southwest. And it's great to know that the Mophie Charger dog, the St. Bernard's, trumped McDonald's. So there's always hope for the challenger in brands throughout the world. Think of things, think of people, think of platforms, content, think visceral news. Think about the creators, right? Live streaming. What do you live stream when you live? It's generally other people, okay? So think beyond technology. Think about the empowerment of all of us through technology, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So I'm going to wrap up now with a final reminder to please check out the Game of Thrones and Interstellar gear by Framestore. There are drinks and lots of things to check out on the other side. But without further ado, please, final round of applause for our fantastic speakers.